Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a tier list for the weapons in Spiritfall. And as you can see, I have all 5 weapons here in their base form and alternate form for a total of 10 unique weapons in the game. Now I'm going to be putting the weapons in tiers from D to S, and I'll be grading the weapon off of 3 types of attributes. Now, the combat in Spiritfall is a combination of your classic action roguelike and Smash Brothers, where you need to knock the enemy out of the screen. So, the most important attribute for a weapon, I think, is the knockback that it provides. You want to be able to knock your opponents out of the screen. It's especially important in the hidden rifts and for the final boss. Now, also for the roguelike genre, you know how important survivability is, and how the weapon will provide you with that survivability is the range that it provides. So I think the range of a weapon is going to be second in importance. Lastly, we know that damage is king. I think all the weapons do decent damage, but certain weapons have movesets where one attack can link easily into another one, providing an overall higher damage output. I may or may not mention it because, I think the range and the knockback are the most important aspects that you should keep in mind when choosing a weapon, but it's one of those minor things that may get mentioned. Now, for the tiers though, B tier is going to be your average solid weapons. These are going to be weapons that are pretty decent in all the different aspects. They may not be extremely strong in one or extremely weak in one, but I think they're just a solid pick. The weapons in C tier is going to be what I consider below average, although I think it's still pretty decent and you can complete a run. It's just that you may have a harder time than the solid weapons in B tier. Now, D tier are going to be the weapons that I think are going to be the worst in the game. They're definitely going to lack in knockback and range, and although not impossible to complete a run, I definitely think you will struggle compared to the other weapons. Going up the tier list, the A tier are going to be strong weapons above average that I consider to have good range, good knockback, and you're going to have an easier time completing your run. Now, the S tier weapons are going to be more or less the same strength as the A tier. They're going to be just as strong, but with a combination of certain enchantments, they'll send you over the top, and you may be untouchable while still dealing out tons of damage. Now, with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. Starting things off, we have the Battle Hammer Axe. Now, I think this weapon is pretty solid, so I'll go ahead and put it in B tier. So this is going to be the first weapon that you're exposed to in the game, and you'll quickly find out that the launcher is very good. It has great knockback, and the weapon overall does good damage. A lot of the attacks in the moveset links well with each other, especially the up attack into the up air. You can combine that with dashes and jumps to carry the enemy up and out of the screen. Where this weapon lacks is its range. It's not very far, but still decent enough for this to be a solid pick. Next, we have the alternate form of the Battle Hammer Axe. Now, this weapon separates into a dual-wielding axe and hammer. While this looks and sounds cool, unfortunately, I don't think this weapon is very good at all. So it's going to go down to D tier. Now, the main problem with this weapon is the launcher's attack being a 2-hit combo, where you first hit with the axe and then the hammer. The hammer is what does the knockback, but because you're constantly moving, it's hard to time the launcher with both hits, especially with the hammer hit. Overall, this weapon doesn't have many high knockback options, so it is hard to hit enemies out of the screen. The attack range of the weapon becomes even smaller and you do low damage with multiple hits. This makes each attack take more time to get its hits off and leaves you longer in a vulnerable state. So unfortunately, this is going to be perhaps one of the worst weapons in the game, in my opinion. Next up, we have the Sisterhood Gauntlets, also known as the Fists. Now, most likely this will be the second weapon you try out, and compared to the hammer, this weapon has more range but does less damage and knockback. You still do have plenty of options to knock enemies off the screen. The up launcher has good vertical range, and it is your best option if you want to knock out enemies at the top of the screen. The up air attack is also good to throw enemies down, but if they collide with the ground, they'll bounce up and you can link into another up air. And you could probably link this over and over until the enemy breaks out. Now, overall, I think the fists are solid, but falls just behind the hammer, so I'm going to go ahead and put it right there in B tier, right behind the hammer. Next up, we have the alternate fists. Now, instead of having 4 smaller ones, you have 2 big fists. So you're going to be doing more damage per hit, and you don't need to rely as much on combos, which is good, because this leaves you less vulnerable less of the time. Now, where this weapon shines most, like most weapon, is in its launcher. Instead of being a hit, it turns into a grab and throws enemies in any direction you want. The hitbox on the launcher is rather big, so that allows you to throw multiple enemies. And this weapon synergizes very well with Yanfa's because Yanfa is all about the wall splat, and this weapon, it's very easy to wall splat enemies into a wall or straight into the ground. And although you can knock out enemies with certain attacks, the launcher will most likely be your go-to to throw enemies off screen. It's a pretty fun weapon to use, and I think it's pretty solid. And I'll go ahead and put it just in front of the axe, or the Battle Hammer axe in B tier. Okay, so I got a lot of weapons in B tier right now, but we're going to talk about the bow next. And if you've seen my videos of my playthrough, you'll know that I really do like the bow. Now, this is a nice, versatile weapon with a good moveset where each attack flows into the next. The launcher, of course, is one of the best in the game with great range and good knockback. In fact, it's so good, the game has to limit you from spamming it by giving you capacity. Essentially, you only have 3 launcher shots before you're out, and each shot has its own cooldown. Now, you can increase the capacity with one of its major enchantments, but if you come across the Exploding Expiration enchantment, definitely grab that one because it'll turn this strong weapon into a godlike zoning tool that makes you near untouchable, and that's why this weapon has to go into S tier. Now, the explosion from the launcher shots has incredible knockback. They'll knock enemies off screen even when you're not trying to. Although Exploding Expiration is the best enchantment for this weapon, you'll want to grab nearly every major enchantment that you can come across because each one adds a lot to this weapon. For example, combining Trick Shot and Bouncing Arrow makes it so that you shoot 2 arrows on a perfect launcher, and if you have a wall right behind you, you're essentially doing a double perfect shot launcher. Now, if the enemy is right above you, the ground will always bounce that second shot upward for the double hit. So incredible range, incredible knockback gives this weapon a large amount of firepower while leaving you at a safe distance, which is why this belongs in S tier. Okay, now let's talk about the alternate form of the bow, or I like to call the crossbow. Now, if you thought the bow has a lot of range, well, the crossbow gives you even more. However, it does feel a little stiff and you don't have as many combos. Your most reliable combo would be the down attack into the up attack for a good amount of damage. But of course, where this weapon shines is, again, the launcher. You now only have 2 capacity, but your launcher becomes a laser beam that goes across the entire room. If you pick up Bouncing Shot enchantments, your laser bounces off at an angle and you can really cover the whole room. And if you get Trick Shot, you're basically hitting everything with every perfect launcher. Now, because you have a laser instead of arrows, you don't get access to the Exploding Expiration enchantment. And by itself, the knockback of this weapon is decent, but not great. But still, I consider this a very strong weapon, and this deserves to be in A tier. Okay, now moving on to the link blades, we go from a long range weapon to a very short range weapon. The ground attacks are very short, to where you need to be almost on top of the enemy in order to hit them. This puts you in constant danger. Now, the launcher does have good range, but the second hit will pull you towards the enemy, and you won't have invincibility frames. So you have to be careful when you decide to do this, as it is unsafe to do. Now your best ground attack is going to be the up attack, which can link to itself and has good vertical reach. You can stun lock enemies against a wall and also is pretty good to meteor at the ledge for edge guarding. Now, besides that, your next best option is to drag enemies off the ledge with your side air and try to finish them off with a down air. This does have a sweet spot if you can get it, but even without it, you most likely will be able to knock enemies down and off the screen. But with the lack of range and knockback options, I'll have to put this weapon in C tier, just below average. Okay, the alternate link blades. I have a lot to say about this weapon, and unfortunately, it suffers from the same problem as the other dual wielding weapons, which is basically the lack of range. Although slightly better than its base form, the alternate link blades have even less knockout options. The only reliable option is to use the launcher close to the edge of the screen, but if you don't space correctly, you'll end up knocking yourself out as well. Now, in my opinion, if the developers made one change, this weapon could be okay. If you notice, the up attack is a two-hit combo where you slice up in the air and then slice down. Very reminiscent of Kirby's up special if you ever played Smash Brothers. And you'll know that one of Kirby's most reliable knockout attack is the down slash on that up special, and that will meteor the enemy down. However, in this game it doesn't. Instead it knocks the enemy up. Now before the down slash on this attack, you can cancel it with a jump and try for a down air. This could knock the enemy out, and especially if you get the sweet spot, but still somewhat unreliable, and you can potentially dive to your own death. Now, if only the devs make this a more reliable knockout option, then this weapon might have been saved, but as it is now, I have to put this weapon in D tier. It's a very close call between the alternate hammer or this being the worst weapon in the game. But for me, I'll put this slightly in front of the hammer, just because you have many attacks that move you around, so you are kind of nimble with this weapon, and it is a little bit more fun, in my opinion, to play with than with the alternate form of the Battle Hammer Axe. All right, we got two weapons left. First up is the base form of the Equinox, also what I like to call the Scythe. Now, the scythe at first seems kind of complicated because you have scythe mode and then you also have staff mode. If you charge up your launcher, you launch the scythe head and go straight into staff mode. Now, I like to stay in scythe mode because I think, in my opinion, it is better. It has more damage and greater knockback. The knockback on the scythe launcher attack is very good, even better than the base hammer. In fact, you could probably go a whole run just using the launcher and not even needing to do regular attacks. In the hidden rifts, you can knock out the rift enemies by doing an up launcher and then jump into another up launcher, and that should be enough to knock them out. Also, if you have the shield hidden rift enemy, you can charge the launcher up and it will multi-hit him, break his shield, and knock him out all at the same time. Now, where this weapon gets really overpowered is if you get the major weapon enchantment called Detonating Echoes. And I made a video showcasing how brain dead it can be when you get that enchantment. So check that out to see how powerful this weapon can be. So definitely, I think this weapon belongs in the S tier. Now, is it better than the bow? I think with enchantments, this weapon is better because the detonating echoes explosion has more room coverage and can hit enemies with multiple explosions. And the bow, even though the exploding arrow is good, the bow may need more enchantments to make it really, really good. Like it needs trick shot and bouncing arrows. But if I'm looking at the weapons without any enchantments, then I think the bow is more versatile and easier to use. With the scythe, launching and pulling back the scythe head does take some time, so without any explosions from any enchantments, it's going to leave you vulnerable to attacks for a longer duration. But I think I'm still going to put the scythe ahead of the bow. And that is because if you have completed a run, then you can just go ahead and start with the Detonating Echo enchantment right away. And that's pretty much the only enchantment you need to make the scythe really, really powerful. Okay, last but not least, we have the alternate form of the Equinox, or what I like to call the drill. Definitely a fun weapon to use. Good damage and multi-hits, lends well with spirits that have stacking statuses. Now, it's not as complex as the Scythe because you have the same move set between the drill mode and the spear mode. The launcher, when you use it, it shoots out the drill head, which you can use to flinch enemies, and then you can go in and attack with the spear. Now, using the launcher in spear mode will execute a stab that has a lot of knockback, and also it will restore the drill head. Now, unfortunately, when you shoot out the drill head with the launcher, it falls rather quickly to the ground, so you're not able to make the most use out of detonating Echo, the weapon enchantment, as you would with the Scythe. Now, although this weapon is strong, it won't be as overpowered as the Scythe, so I think it fits right into A tier. And I'm going to put it behind the crossbow because I think even though it has good knockback, it's not going to outmatch the range that the crossbow provides. Okay, and that is my tier list. What do you think? Do you disagree with any of these? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinions on these weapons. Also, if you want to see how I use these weapons, make sure to check out my playthrough videos. I'm probably not going to do another video doing another run because I think I've explored all that the game has to offer. But if there's a certain weapon that you want to see me give it another go with, let me know and I may do another video. But I have another roguelite in mind that I'm wanting to do a playthrough of, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you guys next time.